Good Thursday morning to you. Welcome into Morning JOX, JOX 94.5. Jamie and Mitchell, Conrad Van Order on the sixth day of March. And don't we just love SEC basketball? It's the gift that keeps on giving. It feels like we go into these games thinking, okay, well, we have a feeling of how these games are going to go. And usually during the midweek games, it's always, didn't see that one coming. But we got to start with the University of Alabama. We knew that the task was at hand for the last couple games for Alabama in the regular season. And it feels very similar to last year where right there at the end, it's, oh man, this team is just not putting it all together. And we knew that the matchup with Tennessee on Saturday was going to be a competitive one. You lose in buzzer beater fashion, and you knew what the Giant was going to be on Wednesday when you took on the Florida Gators. You get them back at home, and you figured, okay, you get them back on your home court. You never really know how it's going to go. And if Alabama can just turn the corner, if they can just turn the corner, kind of maintain where they are, and then they fall on their face once again, as the Florida Gators knock off the Alabama Crimson Tide 99-94. And it feels like we're having the same conversations pretty much after every loss, where there's a period of the game where Alabama will go cold and you can't find a stop on defense. And you look up and you're down, it starts off as like a 4-point deficit. Then it'll start trickle up to about a 7. Then you're down double digits and Alabama starts pressing. And it's a very difficult watch, because the first half, it wasn't like Florida was just jumping out. It's Alabama was just leaving so much change out there on the floor that, okay, you're giving Florida continued life. And I know the style in which Alabama plays. You want to get up and down the floor. You want to put up a lot of points. But when the shots aren't falling, and I've said it many times, it's like a bad air raid team where it's not clicking and you find yourself, okay, this offense can have, a propensity to score almost 40 to, 40 points a game. But when they're not clicking, it just looks like bad operational sports. So it looks bad operationally in basketball in this sense. But I mean, last night was just another example of that, where it never really felt like Alabama was out the game until they were out of the game. And Florida, of course, being a top 5 team in the nation, continuing to have the successful season that they've had. But the free throw line was Alabama's worst nightmare. They just didn't hit enough. And then the 3-point shots weren't falling. And it just felt as though it got to a point where Alabama was starting to press and they just couldn't find an answer. And it's those doggone offensive rebounds in key moments that they were giving Florida extra opportunities, and Florida ends up taking advantage of them, and they end up escaping with a win 99-94. Conrad, I know this has been a very inconsistent season, but does it feel like, do you have the same emotions that you had last season, where it's like, okay, maybe, just maybe, if they put it all together one time, they can make a run, but it does feel difficult to watch when they're not clicking?
Yeah, I mean, it feels a little bit like last year, I guess, just in the sense of, you've hit a rough stretch in the season, and I mean, nobody expected them to go on the run that they did last year, right? I mean, after the way that last year ended, I think myself, like a lot of people, you were just hoping you got out of the first weekend. Like that was going to be, you're going to take that and be happy with it. And so this, it's just different now because the expectation level is so much different. And I think that's where the frustration comes in, because last year's team was good. And I mean, obviously they were good. They made it to a Final Four, but it just felt different. It didn't feel like this year did. You didn't come into the season with the expectations of being, one of the, 3 or 4 best teams in the entire country starting the year. And, for all things considered, they have had a very, very good season. It's just based on the expectations. And I think, honestly, part of it as well is you look across the state and you go, okay, well, as good as our season's been, it hasn't been quite on the level of Auburn's. And I think that makes it a little bit more difficult as well. My thing, and last night, and you shared a lot of the problems that Alabama had. I can live with some of the shooting problems I mean, they still scored 94 points, right?
Right.
Like as bad as, yeah, there were a lot of shots that they missed. There were a lot of shots around the basket that they missed.
Hmm.
And yeah, the 3-point shot just wasn't falling for them like it has been at times. But it was just the lack of effort. And that's where the concern would come in for me of, maybe they're just tired, and I would like to chalk it up to that because last night they certainly didn't look like they were very motivated in a lot of areas. And that was the biggest concern for me is there were so many, you mentioned the offensive rebounds, but just the amount of loose balls that I
Man.
have never seen. I don't think I've ever watched a basketball game in my life where there were more loose balls and it felt like 90% of them went to Florida. And that's a credit to Florida. It's not, maybe there were a couple here or there where you're like, oh, well, that was just a good bounce for Florida. But I mean, offensive rebounds on free throws,
Yeah. Ooh.
I mean, that was a killer at times for Alabama, and just the amount of times where Alabama would get a stop defensively or force a bad shot, and then the ball would end up right back in Florida's hands, and they'd be able to reset the shot clock, and it it was unacceptable. And I know Nate Oates said that after the game. A lot of some of these guys are going to have to decide if they're willing to go out there and make the tough play, make the high effort play. And that's something that we've seen at times this year for Alabama. I don't think effort's been a huge problem a lot of times, but maybe it's just at this point in the year coming off the Tennessee loss, you're just kind of deflated and you're just looking to get that rest. The good news is, we'll talk about the other games that happen is even though you lost this game, you got some help elsewhere in the league. And so you are going to get the double bye in the SEC tournament. And so
Hmm.
you do have that rest coming up for you. But, you've now lost 4 of 6. You have to go on the road and play the number 1 team in the country on Saturday. You don't want to end the year going 5 or losing 5 of your last 7. I'll just say that. So hopefully that Nate Oates is able to get something out of him on Saturday and it's a different looking team. And, I don't think you're going to get that in the NCAA tournament, but still, it's the fact that you've had such a great season, and now here, the last couple of weeks of the year, you are kind of letting it all fall apart to a certain degree, and it's just frustrating. Last night was a very frustrating game to watch because while it was technically competitive, and I guess Alabama did have an opportunity at the very end if Florida had missed some free throws. But the fact that you're even in that situation,
Hmm.
especially because, I mean, the first half was so great where, it was just back and forth the entire time. And, then you get into the second half and it just, Florida was just the better team. And Condon was the best player on the floor last night for either team. And he
Yes.
just absolutely dominated at times. And Alabama didn't have an answer for him down low. And, credit to Florida. They did a good job of not letting Alabama jack up a bunch of 3-point shots and forcing them to go and take tough twos. And some of the shot selection just probably wasn't the shots that I would have been taking. But that's been a problem for Alabama at times where you can tell they get a little antsy with the
Yep.
basketball and they don't seem to know what to do, and somebody forces up a bad shot and just like that you're running back down the floor and having to defend, and a team like Florida that can get up and down at the same level that you can. It's just it was a frustrating game, a game that Alabama could have won, a game that you would have liked to see them be more motivated for. And if that's the effort that you're going to get in the postseason, Alabama's not going to be making a very deep run in the tournament. But I have reason to believe that they won't be that lackadaisical when it becomes a win or go home type scenario. But just not the momentum you want to be carrying. And we talk about all the time how important it is to be playing your best basketball at this time of the year. And I think it's safe to say that Alabama is not playing their best basketball right now.
No, like if I would have told you that Alabama was going to go out there, score 94 points, only turn the ball over
Yeah.
6 times,
Mhm.
and they had 35 rebounds, you're thinking, oh, well, they handled their business. Well, then you flip it around and Florida scores 99 points. They turn the ball over 10 times, but they grab 50 rebounds, and 16 of those 50 were offensive rebounds. And to Conrad's point, I mean, you're getting, Alabama's not boxing out on free throws. Defensively, I don't know if the pace is what's throwing them off, but it's something about them defensively that I just cannot understand how they get up and down the floor. Okay, if you're back on transition, you just got to attack the paint and just like, okay, force them to shoot it outside. But I don't know what Nate Oates has to do to get this team to understand, okay, you miss a shot on the offensive side, just give me 110 on the defense side, because basketball is the sport where you have to flip it around. Like there's no, oh, we have another five that go out there and play defense. You can't let the offensive woes also turn into defensive situations, and like you turned them over early. You didn't get any points off the turnovers, but then when Florida was turning you over, the few times they did, they ended up getting points off of it. And I just think that at some point, it's either going to balance itself out because the competition is only going to get tougher. But I do agree with you that I'm not saying that they're going to go to Auburn and pull off the upset. I just don't think that it's going to happen. But they have to at least start playing better basketball for tournament time, or it's going to be quick. And I think for Alabama and Mark Sears, you can tell that he's reached the point of he's going James Harden. It's, if nobody else is going to do it, I got it. If it means I got to, take the air out the ball by dribbling it for the, the entire 35-second shot clock, so be it. But I just don't know what Alabama can really do right now, except like all their issues start defensively because, okay, like there was a period in the game where, like I said, Florida was up, I think like 4. They go down, miss a shot, they end up coming up, and it's like 6, then 9, then 12, and you're looking, and Alabama's just throwing up, they're jacking up just quick threes to try to, cut into the deficit. And it's like, well, you have to make a stop first before this snowball just starts to keep rolling and rolling and rolling. I don't know, man. Defensively, Alabama's they have some issues, and it's been all season long, really, because it's hard for me to process how in college basketball now you can score 94 points and still lose the ball game.
Yeah, no, I mean that should never happen. Just like when you go on the road to Missouri and score 98 or whatever it was, and you lose that game by double digits, like that's something that should just never happen. And yeah, I mean I don't know what I don't know what the solution is exactly, again, other than, all right, getting everybody a reset, 4 or 5 days off, and hoping that that is kind of the cure-all for you. And maybe it is, but, it's hard for me to have confidence that just because Alabama's now going to have, the double bye in the SEC tournament, that they're going to, magically, start playing defense at a higher level. And, I mean, we did see that last year, and I think that's where a lot of people are going to have optimism because they're going to go, oh, look at how last year's team did, and they can do that again. And they certainly can do that again. I think it's kind of hard to bank on that happening 2 years in a row. I mean, it was wild enough for it to happen 1 year, let alone for you to kind of turn your season around like that at the point that they did. Because, again, like at this point, you kind of are who you are, right? We know who you are. Other teams know who you are. They know how to take advantage of that. And again, Florida is an excellent basketball team, right? Watching that team last night, you're like, man, okay, yeah, this is a team that could make it to the Final Four.
Yep.
And again, it was a competitive basketball game, right? It's not like Alabama got blown out, but it definitely did have a different feel than like the Tennessee game, for example, where, the Tennessee game is devastating as it was to lose in that fashion. I thought Alabama played a good basketball game, right? They had a bad 30 seconds at the end, but they played a good basketball game against a very tough physical team. And I know last night, again, it was a close basketball game, but it just didn't feel like it was a good game from Alabama. And especially when you get to the end and you look at, okay, well, Alabama, they had fight. They were able to make it close at the very end of the game. And you go back and you just look and you're like, so you're telling me if, 2 or 3 of those loose balls, Alabama dives on the floor and makes a play after one of them and gets the ball back, you might win that basketball game. And I know in the moment you're probably not thinking that way, but, I just think that's a harsh reality, for when you're watching film of that game. If you're Alabama and you look back and you go, so as poorly as we did play at times, we were 2 or 3 possessions away from potentially being able to flip this thing around and getting a win. So why were we not getting that effort in the moment, right? Why can you not understand that in the moment? And on top of the fact that, I mean, it's just basketball 101, but just when you watch them play, when Alabama is playing well defensively and they're getting stops and they're able to move the ball quickly down the court back to their side and put up shots, that's when they are at their best, right? And good defense feeds into good offense and vice versa. And I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Like the players have to be able to feel that when they're out there on the court and just the flow of the game. And so it's just head scratching sometimes when it does feel like, okay, I get it. You're not hitting your shots on the offensive end, but you know that you're going to get good looks if you turn around and play good defense, and that's going to be your best opportunity. And yet they just, for whatever reason, don't seem to be able to do that consistently. And um, you're running out of time to fix these problems.
Yep.
I will just say that. So you got one more regular season game, and then you've got potentially 3 chances in Nashville if you were to make it all the way there, and then it's time. And if you lose the next game after that, you're going home. So
Yep.
they've got to get this turned around quickly. Again, I hope that we look back on this in a few weeks and go, okay, that was just an Alabama team that was tired. They'd gotten beat up by the gauntlet of the SEC, and they needed some rest. But yeah, low effort is again, if you're Nate Oates, I think you can live with if the shots aren't falling for you in a given night. You can live with it if somebody hits a buzzer beater against you from 35 feet. That's going to happen. It is what it is. But you can't live with it when your guys aren't giving an effort and you're watching the team on the other side of things that, to be honest, I mean, yeah, they locked up the number 2 spot in the SEC, but Alabama kind of had more on the line in that game than Florida did.
Yep.
And Florida looked like the team that wanted to go out there and win a basketball game, and Alabama didn't really look like they cared to win last night.
Yeah, and they weren't the only team last night in the SEC that suffered defeat as kind of the better team going into it, if you ask me. 205-834-9450. We'll take a look at some of the other games in the SEC. Also, get to your text message, your calls, because they are coming in this morning. Keep it locked right here on Morning JOX and JOX 94.5. Oh, yeah. Welcome back in the Morning JOX. JOX 94.5. Damian Mitchell, Conrad Van Order here with you. Of course, our wonderful listeners, can't forget about you. You can always join in, 205-834-9450. Your text message, your calls, always welcome here with us in the morning. And hey, he comes back with a little old, ain't no love in Oklahoma. There definitely wasn't any last night for Missouri as the number 15 ranked Missouri Tigers go on the road to Norman, Oklahoma, and fall to the Sooners, 96-84. Jeremiah Fears, a guy that, I mean, when he's on, Oklahoma does look like a real dangerous tournament team. He gives you 31, and I didn't get a chance to really watch the game. It was on SEC Network Plus, if that kind of tells you where. It's crazy enough that we would have on some nights we'll have a tip off at 8 p.m. on SEC Network. We'll have some on ESPN2. Last night you had Oklahoma and Missouri playing on the SEC Network Plus. But if you're Missouri, you kind of fumbled the bag on this one. Not even kind of. You just straight up fumbled the bag on this one. This was something that you just could not afford to happen as far as when it comes to seeding in the SEC tournament. And them in Tennessee kind of, I mean, if you're Alabama, you kind of failed. You failed, but you failed forward a little bit because of what events transpired after your loss to Florida last night.
Yeah, it is kind of ironic that, you go from football season and Oklahoma kind of destroying your hopes and dreams, and now here you are in basketball season, and they just did you a solid. So, yeah, I mean, this was my favorite game of the night because, like you said, Oklahoma beating Missouri guarantees that Alabama is going to be one of the top 4 teams in the SEC and get that double bye. And, the more impressive thing is, now over the last 2 nights, you've had 4 teams that were essentially in desperation. We need to win in order to have a good chance of getting into the NCAA tournament. And all 4 of those teams have won. Because you had Arkansas, Texas, and Georgia the other night, and now you had Oklahoma last night. And so, I still don't think we're going to get all 14 teams in, but it looks a lot more likely now that we are going to get 12 or 13 teams into the NCAA tournament, which is nice. So, yeah, good job for Oklahoma. Again, for Missouri, SEC is absolutely brutal. I mean, this was a team that, again, a couple weeks ago after they knocked off Alabama, we were looking at them and going, okay, yeah, this is one of the best teams in the SEC, and they still are one of the best teams in the SEC, but again, you're going to see just a lot of these teams. We saw it with Tennessee in earlier parts of the year. I mean, really outside of Auburn and Florida, every other team you've seen has had these stretches where they start to, show some weaknesses here a little bit. And I think, the fact it's at the back half of the season isn't a surprise just because of how difficult of a path it's been. But yeah, I mean, this is not. I'm not gonna say it's a bad Oklahoma team, but it's
not the best.
It's not a great Oklahoma team.
Right.
They can be very underwhelming at times, but again, I mean, any given night here in the SEC, you never know what can happen. So I mean, yeah, credit to the Sooners for getting that big win at home, and that'll certainly help them out when it comes to the NCAA tournament. And they did Alabama solid, so I will take it. But you did then have the other game down there in Mississippi. And this is one of those where, yeah, it's going to make you mad, again, if you're Alabama, because you look at it and you go, man, if we had beaten Florida last night,
yep,
we'd be sitting pretty right now. We'd be in a really good spot, but you're not. But Ole Miss, they pull off the upset of Tennessee last night, 78-76 there in Oxford, Mississippi, and they did storm the court. So I guess NIL is not a concern.
A delayed storming of the court.
It was a delayed storming of the court.
And Chris Beard's like, hey, y'all, give us some time. Wait till Tennessee is off the floor. Then y'all come on. So it's like a delayed party. Like it's, oh man, you got all the emotion and you're just holding them back. You check and see, make sure, okay, Tennessee's gone. Y'all come on. And they did what they needed to do.
Yeah, and it was good to see them celebrate. He seemed like he was enjoying himself last night after the game. So, hey, a great win for Ole Miss.
Yeah.
And again, for Tennessee, you had an opportunity. I'm not going to lie, watching the game, I was like, oh, man, they're really about to hit back-to-back buzzer beaters. And
that's the same thing I
That's
said.
just the way that this is going to go for Tennessee, and that's going to be miserable for everybody.
Great play design out of the timeout, too.
Yeah.
Great play design.
You had a look. I mean, they had a chance for it, but, yeah, I mean, credit to Ole Miss. That's a big win for them now. First time because they beat Alabama earlier in the year, so they have two top 5 teams or two top 5 wins this year for the first time ever. So you've got a lot of that in the SEC this year, a lot of first time evers for a lot of teams in terms of how good their resumes are this year. So I guess Florida now is going to move up to the 1 seed, and Tennessee's going to come and join Alabama on the 2 line.
Yeah,
I would imagine that's what's going to happen.
Listen, a lot of things can happen, man. But feel like you left some change out there, man. Alabama left some change out there, but it's kind of how it is in the SEC. 205-834-9450. Get into your text messages, your calls right now.
Everyone
Jamie,
in a good mood this morning?
not so much, because Jamie starts it off. He says, Jamie from Hayden, Alabama has no dog on the team at all. Sears can score 30, but they couldn't guard my mama.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing is I feel like they have at times had guys like I feel like Mo D is that guy at times. Last night was not his best game. But I think that's the thing again, just for the team as a whole, is there's just not that consistency where night in and night out you feel like you know what you're going to get, except in the form of you're probably going to get some turnovers and things like that, which is obviously not what you want to be known for consistency wise. But yeah, they didn't have any dogs last night.
Yep. Antoine texting and says they lack effort and toughness to me. The team seems to sulk when things don't go their way. Just my opinion. I
think there's a little bit of that, maybe.
There's something. Tim from Coleman, he texted in and says, okay, I can't help but wonder why Grant Nelson keeps playing meaningful minutes. He's 6'11", got out rebounded by both of the starting guards last night, can't defend the rim, can't defend the perimeter, hasn't made a 3-pointer since February 11th, and below average free throw shooter. Am I missing something? Cook.
Yeah, Grant Nelson's been a big disappointment, to say the least, this year. He has not been very good.
It's difficult. Somebody texts in and says defense was awful last night. Got to get it together before the tournament. You got to do something, man, because like Conrad said, you are running out of time. These are things that will get you beat and sent home a lot earlier than you expect, whether the SEC tournament or the NCAA tournament. Because again, I'm thinking just in college basketball terms, if your team is scoring 94 points, you're handling your business. But when the other team has 50 rebounds and 99 points, it's like, okay, well, what did you do? Did you find a stop on defense? And obviously not.
Yeah, and I mean, you just look at the game, and I know Florida's a very good rebounding team. I think they were 3rd in the country. That maybe they moved up after last night. Third in the country in rebounds per game. Alabama's 1st in the country in rebounding. They're the best rebounding team in college basketball, statistically speaking. And for that to happen, that's what was just so shocking about it, is it was just, this is something you're good at. Like, you have been good at all season long, and for whatever reason last night, they just decided that they didn't want to rebound, and they didn't want to dive on the floor and go after balls, and it was so frustrating. And even times when you would get a stop, the one time where Alabama got a stop and, the Florida dude was able to hold it in bounds, throw it off Mark Sears, and Florida gets the ball back, and then they hit a 3, and you're just sitting there and you're like, what are we even doing? Like, how are you just letting it? It's like Florida was just playing with Alabama at times of, oh, you're just going to let us get the ball again? Okay, great. We'll take it. And we'll turn that into some second chance points. Thank you very much. And yeah, I don't know what motivation you need for senior night, your last home game, especially for Mark Sears. I mean, you could tell, like, it was his last game. He was going to, by golly, if we lose, it's not going to be because of me.
Yep.
But you're playing a top 5 team. If you win, you're going to have the opportunity to be a 1 seed in the tournament. You're going to lock up for sure the double bye without needing anybody else's help. Like, there was a lot to play for last night. It wasn't, going back to Auburn and Texas A&M where you look at that game and you go, okay, I get it. They still want to, hit the record for most wins in a season or SEC wins in a season and things like that. But, Auburn was good, right? Like, they had clinched their spot. They knew where they were going to be. They were going to be a number 1 overall seed regardless. So that you can kind of forgive. But for Alabama, when you've lost 3 of your last 5 going into the game and everything else I just mentioned, how do you not show up for that game motivated and ready to give 100% effort? That's the concerning part for me, is that's not the kind of a game that you should have to question.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, are the players motivated and ready to go play a top 5 team in their home Coliseum? That's just not something I ever thought I would have to say. And that hopefully is a one-time thing. And Saturday, it is a much different looking team for both Alabama and Auburn based on what we saw here in the middle of the week. But, you know, again, Alabama, you're not trending in the right direction right now.
Not at all. And then just to add insult to injury, your boy Drake takes in. He says, I guess Florida owns the state of Alabama this year.
Yeah, they do.
They do indeed. Came to Neville Arena, smacked Auburn around. Came to Coleman Coliseum, smacked Alabama around, and it was Vanderbilt in football, and now it's Florida in basketball.
Only team to beat both Alabama and Auburn this year. Good for the Gators.
Greg texted in. He says, I think Florida just dunked again on Bama.
I mean, there were some times where and is Cliff not looking behind him, or it just felt like there were multiple times where Condon came out of nowhere and just nobody even had their hands up because they didn't know where he was. It's like, really, we don't know where that guy is.
Somebody texted in and says it's 3 7-footers. They give Alabama absolutely nothing over 40 minutes consistently.
That's the thing with the size, yeah. You force Alabama into the tough twos, and as good as Mark Sears is around the rim, this is no offense to him, he's not the tallest guy in the world, and so you're going to run into trouble when you're dealing with that kind of size. That's just the way that's going to work. So I don't. Hopefully they're able to get some things corrected here over the next couple of days. Just like I said for Auburn, I would imagine the next 2 days of practice for Alabama are probably not going to be the most fun that they've ever had, but that's exactly the way that it should be. And they should be hopefully whipped into shape. And if you, again, just like the Florida game, didn't think I'd have to say it before that, but if you can't get up for this game, I know you already have the double bye locked up. You're going to be a number 2 seed regardless probably of what happens on Saturday and in the SEC tournament, but have a little chip on your shoulder. Go out there on Saturday, play for something.
Yeah, because what did the weekend say? Seems like you're running out of time. Seems like you're running out of time. 205-834-9450. We'll continue with your text message, get to your calls on the other side. Keep it locked right here on Morning JOX and JOX 94.5. Very fitting. Very fitting. DJ Conrad on the ones and twos this early in the morning because it seems like Alabama basketball, you're running out of time. But hey, we thought they were running out of time last season, and next thing you know, they find themselves in the Final Four. Maybe, just maybe they can turn it around. They've got to get some questions answered. Welcome back in the Morning JOX. JOX 94.5, Damian Mitchell, Conrad Van Order, and y'all as well. Our wonderful listeners, 205-834-9450. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's talk some ball. And we got Conrad, cover your ears because we got to go to our buddy PG. We know he's a big Florida fan. So, PG, the floor is yours, brother. What's happening this morning?
Good morning, yippee-yi-yo-ki-yay. I think God has smiled on the Gators, as the old ball coach would say. I have to say we are the Alabama State champs. You guys, whoever stole my thunder a while ago, if I had to pick this, which I did at the beginning of the season, we would be 0-2 in the state of Alabama. I had no idea we could beat Auburn at Auburn or Alabama at Alabama. And then Tennessee Huckleberries blow their game. I couldn't ask for a better night, And it's just amazing that, I finally can talk again like the old PG, because I don't get to enjoy this much. But, guys, I think this is the best team. As Don said a couple of weeks ago, I think this is not only the best team in the SEC, I think this is the best team in the nation. I'm going to go a step further and say I think this is better than Billy Donovan's teams because it's overall depth. 5 great shooting guards, 5 big men that could shoot free throws, everything. I think we got more depth than the Billy Donovan teams.
Whew.
I know that's a stretch.
Yeah, PG. Hey. I mean, listen.
So we're looking at back-to-back titles here? Is that what we're talking about, PG?
Well, I don't know if I could go that far, brother. I'll just take one right now. Thanks, Conrad. I would definitely take one.
Hey, I would too, brother. Trust me.
Yeah, but I appreciate you guys. Y'all have a great show, and and I guess it was a good night for the Gators. So enjoy it, Gators, because I tell you what, we don't get this often. So
well, we're happy for you, PG.
Day.
We happy for. Hey, go Gators, brother.
All right, go Gators. See you guys.
Man,
I'm not happy about the game, but I can be happy for PG.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see how he stands with his chest up and says it with pride. He even said that this team was better than the Billy Donovan era of Florida. Now, like he would know more about it because
I was about to say I'll take his
word.
I'll take his word being the Florida fan, but those teams were good.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's continue on the phone line. Let's go to Big Poe this morning. Wants to talk some ball with us. What's happening this morning, Poe?
Man, Damian, Mitch, Conrad, what's up, my man?
What's happening?
Hey, man, look, I saw the game last night, man, and everybody, I mean, my thing is this, and this just me, you know what I'm saying, watching sports and seeing stuff like this, y'all, Conrad, every team is good. So you can't just say that Bama maybe they did do what everybody was saying, play down, and get off my man Grant, man. I love Grant. That's my guy. You know what I'm saying? So leave the man alone. He's going to come back. He's going to handle it better. He's going to do his thing. So y'all get off my man Grant. My thing is, everybody is good in the SEC. Everybody, only consistent team we see is Auburn, opposed to what happened against Texas A&M. In Florida, them dudes good. I didn't realize them dudes, after watching them dudes last night, man, and trying to watch all the teams, everybody just good in the SEC. So if that's the case, that means everybody who's an SEC fan is gonna talk like that about their team when their team lose, man. But the most important thing, they doing this, they gonna get in the SEC. In the NCAA tournament and handle their business. But one more thing I gotta say, y'all, is this: why was my man eating a sandwich and drinking some water on the bench last night?
Oh,
y'all see that?
Yeah. So he, it's Ramadan. And so he can only eat at certain times a day, and so he can't eat until the sun goes down. So based on tip-off, they had that ready for Mo to go on the bench.
Oh, that's right. Cause all the my man, my young guy from UConn was like that 2 years ago. He was Ramadan.
Yep.
Yeah. So so that's why, and I was tripping. I was like, yeah, dog. But anyway, y'all, I just wanted to say that, man. Your boy Poe, I love y'all, but man, hey, just calm down, man. Everybody in the SEC is just good, and you're gonna get that. And get off my man Grant. I love y'all. I'm out.
All right, Big Poe, we appreciate you, man. Hey, y'all heard Poe? Get off Grant. He gonna turn around. We're waiting for that Grant Nelson game, and he turns it up about this time. I mean, you got to think last night he gave you 10. That's more than what we've seen him put out.
Don't do this, Damian.
I'm just saying, man.
I love Poe. When Grant Nelson turns it around, I'll get off his back. But
we got to see it.
They paid that man some good money to come back for another year, and I want a return on my investment if I'm Alabama. I'll just put it that way. But No, but I do think Poe brings up a good point just in the sense of everybody, at least the teams that we're going and talking about, the top 10 teams or so in the SEC are all very good. And we also have to remember that, again, the first weekend at least of the NCAA tournament for a lot of these teams, they're going to have some of the easiest matchups that they've had in 3 months. And so I think that's also important context to keep in. Now, granted, if you're an Alabama fan and you're, confident in making it to the Sweet 16, but then you're like, well, what if we run into a Florida or a Tennessee or somebody like that? Well, that's going to be difficult, but you have to imagine that based on where you're going to be seated as a 2 seed, most likely, you're probably going to have two. You're not going to be playing Florida or Tennessee the first weekend. I'll just put it that way.
Absolutely. Let's continue on the phone lines. John in T-Town wants to talk with us this morning. What's happening, John?
Good morning, fellas. He talks about the strength of SEC. Think about it. If you got 3 teams that win 2 games, we'll have 14 out of 16 teams with 20 wins. So that I don't think there's any other conference in the NCAA that can say that. Watching the game last night, what Nate Oates is going to do, he's going to have to take a page out of Bruce Pearl's defensive book. A couple of years ago, you take back when they had Jared Harper. We were kind of small. We didn't really have a lot of great shooters, no on-ball defenders that were great. They went to that full-court press about 70% of the game because our game back then was running. They're not like they are now where we got enough people to rotate in and out to play on-ball defense. So they pressed nearly 90% of the game, kind of like the old Arkansas teams, so that they could get their runs out because that's how that's Alabama's offense, running up and down the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that's what he needs to do with the style offense that he coaches is switch to that. They're going to have to press most of the game. They're not great on-ball defenders, but that press creates problems that they can get out and run. I'll hang up. Listen, y'all guys have a great show.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a great point as far as just trying to stop somebody defensively. And maybe it does require them just, after they made basket, jump right into a press. But because some of these teams, they're very similar to Alabama where they get up the court rather quickly, I mean, it could just kind of be a situational thing where maybe to start the second half or something, especially if you're down, just jump right into it. You start the game off, you get a quick basket, boom, jump right into it. Even when you start the game in a pressing situation, because I do think they brings up a great point. Because you just never know how many, long passes they have to make, or you add a little bit of a pressure. But they're going to have to do something. Something's got to happen defensively for Alabama. Because, if your shots aren't falling, at least you can prevent somebody from, jumping out on a lead on you.
No, you're right. Again, I'm not going to say anything's a bad idea at this point. If you want to give it a shot, you got a couple games to. If you want to try to do something different defensively. But again, it's just, I think you have a lot of guys on that team that are or can be good defenders. I think that's the frustrating point is we see good defense from Alabama at times. It's not like, they've just played atrocious defense for all 40 minutes of every game that they played this year. They've had some games where they played good defensively. They've had a lot of games where they played a good half defensively.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the frustrating part for a lot of the fan base is you can watch it and go, well, why can't you just do that the whole game? And I understand, you're going to get tired. Things are going to happen. That's the way it works. But to just have some of these utter collapses that you've seen from Alabama in terms of first half defense versus second half defense and points per possession allowed. Last night, Alabama was allowing 1.5 points per possession for Florida. They were basically scoring a bucket every time they got the ball. You can't, sometimes you're just going to go up against teams that have a hot shooting night, right? And that's just the way that it goes sometimes. But just to see how tough they can be at times, and when they want to play good defense and their shots are falling on the offensive glass, and so they're happy and they're in a good mood going down to the other side of the court. It is a thing of beauty to watch. It really is. But we had a caller earlier say they definitely seem like a team where the shots are not falling for them. They're going to turn that into bad effort on the defensive side of things because they're not having fun. The game's not going their way. And instead of doubling down and saying, let's control what we can control, which is good defense, they let teams blow by them and they find themselves in holes that they just can't dig themselves out of when they're not having, spectacular shooting nights. So we could talk for 5 hours about last night and the frustrations of it.
Yeah, it really could. 205-834-9450. We'll continue with your text message, your calls on the other side. Keep it locked right here on JOX 94.5. .651 here on Morning JOX. JOX 94.5, Damian Conrad here with you for a few more moments as we get you set for McElroy and Kublik in the morning at the top of the hour. Then at 10 o'clock, three-man front makes their appearance. And at 2 o'clock, Paul Feinbaum and the Paul Feinbaum Show will keep you locked and loaded here on JOX 94.5. Oh, boy. Alabama fans are they are frustrated. They are frustrated. And CJ from Trussell texts in and says, guys, when do we start holding Nate Oates accountable? Bama was ranked as the best team in the nation beginning of the season. They have steadily declined as the season progressed. The coach has to be held responsible for keeping the team motivated and locked in. After the success the team had last year, you thought they would be more consistent and motivated. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. It definitely does fall back on the coach at certain points, and it doesn't help when, you have a game like, coming off the Tennessee game where, Nate Oates essentially took the blame for that loss and the way that last 30 seconds was handled. And then you show, you return that with the less than inspiring performance last night in terms of the effort that you got from the guys. So yeah, I mean, that is going to be his test now of, and he kind of, somebody asked him after the game last night if he feels like this is the same scenario as last year where Alabama had a skid at the end of the regular season before going to the Final Four. And I mean, he straight up said last night he felt like last year's team quit on him at times, or they quit on themselves at times, and he doesn't think that this year's team is the same way. He thinks that this year's team is much more, I guess, mentally sound. Like they're not going to quit. And I don't think they were quitting last night. They just didn't. It looked like they thought they were going to go out there and Florida wasn't as good as Florida is, and they were just going to be able to kind of tiptoe around and find a way to win that basketball game. And that's not how the game ended up working, and they were never able to pick themselves up and kind of motivate themselves in games. So, yeah, I mean, it does. Part of it does fall back on Nate Oates. He is the coach.
Yeah, it does. Let's continue on the phone lines before we get out of here. Let's go to Don. Wants to talk some ball with us this morning. What's happening, Don?
Hey, my guys, how y'all doing?
Doing well, brother.
Conrad, how are you, buddy?
I've been better. I'm just kidding.
I bet.
I'm fine.
But hey, it was good to hear from PG again. And PG, I did say that. And when y'all were on your game, y'all were very, very good. And you should be a number one seed. Now Tennessee and Alabama both lost last night. So you're right there, PG. Go, hey, maybe we'll see you in the Final Four, PG.
Well, this is Damian and Conrad, so.
I know that, but he's listening. I wanted to give him a message there about my friend.
Yeah, I was just wondering when the pause came in. I was like, are you expecting PG to reply? Like,
what's up, Don?
Conrad, buddy, at least he can call a timeout with 2 seconds to go when he's down by 5 last night.
Yeah, that was bizarre. And, I mean, it looked like they just drew up a play so Mark Sears could hit his last shot in Coleman, I guess. I don't know what that was, but, yeah, that was interesting. He's just getting practice in, Don.
Well, yeah, that's right. We give Sears credit, buddy. He has a heck of a lot.
Oh.
When they losing his last game at the airport hangar.
Yeah, hey, Sears has been great. He's had a great career. He's really turned his season around too. Because again, I mean, he wasn't playing bad, but he has really picked it up here over the last couple of weeks. And if there's anything that gives you optimism for Alabama, I think heading into the postseason, it's that Mark Sears has certainly found that next gear, and I don't have to question if he's going to show up.
Nope. Somebody takes in defense is about effort, and you can't coach effort. You hear that, Alabama? Matt Roy and Keep Looking in the Morning. They're next.